There once lived a man whose name brought fear across the streets of Jerusalem. Whenever followers of Jesus heard the name Saul of Tarsus, hearts began to tremble. He was intelligent, respected, powerful, and completely determined to destroy Christianity before it could spread any further. To Saul, the followers of Jesus were dangerous, and he believed he was doing the work of God by hunting them down. As crowds gathered around Stephen, the first Christian martyr, stones rained violently through the air. People screamed in anger while Stephen fell to the ground, bleeding and broken. But even in his final moments, Stephen lifted his eyes toward heaven and prayed for the very people killing him. Standing nearby was Saul, watching with cold approval. But Stephen's final words would remain buried deep inside Saul's heart. Fear spread through Jerusalem like wildfire. Christian families hid behind locked doors in silence. Parents whispered prayers while children cried quietly in dark corners.
Driven by anger and religious zeal, Saul obtained permission from the high priest to travel to Damascus. His mission was simple: arrest every follower of Jesus he could find and bring them back in chains. As horses thundered across the desert road, Saul believed he was marching toward victory. But heaven had already prepared a different destiny for him. Then suddenly, everything changed. A light brighter than the sun exploded from the heavens with terrifying power. Saul fell violently from his horse onto the dusty ground as the desert became consumed by heavenly glory. In fear and confusion, he heard a voice call his name from the light. And in that moment, Saul realized he was standing before the very Jesus.
When the light disappeared, Saul opened his eyes, but he could no longer see. The strong and confident Pharisee who once dragged believers through the streets now needed others to guide his steps. Every ounce of pride inside him had been shattered. For the first time in his life, Saul was completely helpless. For 3 long days, Saul sat alone in darkness. He neither ate nor drank. The screams of the people he had persecuted echoed through his mind. He remembered Stephen's face. He remembered the fear he had caused. And broken by guilt, Saul prayed like never before. While Saul prayed in darkness, God spoke to a disciple named Ananias. At first, Ananias was afraid because everyone knew who Saul was. This was the man responsible for imprisoning Christians. But God saw something greater. Where others saw a persecutor, heaven saw a future apostle. When Ananias finally entered the room and laid his hands on Saul, something miraculous happened. What looked like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and suddenly he could see again. But it was more than physical sight. For the first time, Saul truly understood grace, mercy, and the truth about Jesus Christ. Soon afterward, Saul entered the water to be baptized. The man who once hunted Christians rose from the water transformed forever. His heart had changed. His purpose had changed. And from that day forward, the persecutor would become a preacher. The same voice that once threatened believers now boldly preached about Jesus in public streets and crowded marketplaces. People could hardly believe what they were hearing. The man who once tried to destroy Christianity was now risking his own life to spread it. But Saul's transformation came with a price. The same religious leaders who once trusted him now wanted him dead. Whispers of murder spread through the city as enemies plotted against him in secret. And under the cover of darkness, believers lowered Saul through the city wall in a basket so he could escape.
As years passed, Saul became known as Paul, and the man once feared across cities began traveling across nations, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Through deserts, villages, prisons, storms, and suffering, Paul carried a message of hope to the world. Wherever Paul went, miracles followed. The sick were healed. The broken found hope again. And countless lives were transformed by the power of God working through him. Crowds gathered to hear the message of Jesus, and entire cities were impacted by his preaching. But not everyone welcomed the truth. Paul was beaten, mocked, rejected, and attacked by angry crowds. He was dragged through streets and left wounded many times. Yet through every hardship, he refused to stop preaching the gospel. One night, Paul and Silas sat chained inside a cold prison cell. Instead of complaining or giving in to fear, they began worshiping God in the darkness. And suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. Chains fell from their wrists. Prison doors burst open, and even the prison guard fell to his knees in amazement. Even during suffering, Paul never stopped encouraging others. While sitting in prison cells, he wrote powerful letters filled with faith, hope, courage, and wisdom. Those same letters would later become part of the Bible and inspire millions of believers around the world for generations to come. During one journey across the sea, a violent storm crashed against Paul's ship with terrifying force. Waves tore through the vessel while sailors panicked in fear. But while others expected death, Paul remained calm because he trusted that God was still with him, even in the middle of the storm.
The ship was eventually destroyed by the raging sea. But just as God promised, every person survived safely. Even when everything around him fell apart, God protected Paul once again. After reaching the island of Malta, a deadly snake suddenly bit Paul's hand while he gathered firewood. The people watching expected him to collapse and die at any moment. But Paul simply shook the snake into the fire and continued unharmed. And once again, people witnessed the power of God over his life. Paul knew suffering awaited him in Jerusalem. He knew chains, persecution, and even death were ahead. But none of it stopped him from continuing his mission. His faith had become stronger than his fear.
Even while standing in chains before governors and kings, Paul preached boldly about Jesus Christ. His body may have been imprisoned, but his voice could not be silenced. His courage amazed even the rulers who judged him. Years later, Paul sat alone in prison once again. Many friends had left. The years of suffering had had taken their toll. But his faith never weakened. He knew he had fulfilled the purpose God gave him. History tells us that Paul was eventually executed in Rome for his faith in Jesus Christ. But even death could not silence his message. The words he preached continued spreading across nations long after he was gone. The man who once hunted Christians became one of Christianity's greatest voices. His story became proof that no one is too broken, too lost, or too far gone for God's grace. A persecutor became a preacher. A broken man became a chosen vessel. And the story of Apostle Paul reminds the world that God can transform absolutely anyone.
If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful Bible stories brought to life. And remember, no matter your past, God can still use your future.